Thank you. Truly, what a gift to hear Tony's voice.
Yes.
One power. That's the truth of what's within each of us. We call it 12 powers, principles, all these different things, but there's one power, and it's the presence of the Christ within. Today, I want to focus on the many of the different 12 powers and the different powers within us, but the one that Charles Fillmore would call the most fundamental, which is the power of will. And what I love about that is it's really each of these are within us and for us to guide and direct. As you were talking about the prayer consciousness, I love that. Here's a fun little fact for you. Do you know that every single day at Unity Village at 11 a.m., which would be noon here, everything stops and you hear either Charles or Myrtle's voice saying a prayer over the speaker system? What a gift. Can you imagine to join in that force, in that energy, in that collective consciousness and pray at that time together? So just a consideration as you're praying to think, maybe put your calendar on your phone to go off at noon every day, just to pause. It is our choice to join in whatever we choose. You can join in the complaints in the line at the grocery store. We've all been there, right? Have you noticed how people connect over, oh, can you believe it's so hot? Or now it's too cold? Or, and whenever that happens to me, I always say, I'm so grateful. I love it because I know winter's coming, and so I love the heat. And when it gets cool, I'm so grateful it's not 100 anymore. And we can choose to go in either direction. We can choose what we join in on. So Fillmore teaches us that the executive power of the mind is what will is. It's the power of choice, which is our key word today. It's what we're focusing on. Each of us has our own power of choice. Now, when I first thought about the 12 powers, I thought, which one would I choose? What's my favorite? And so I'm curious as you think about this, what your power of choice is. But then I realized that the real power is the power to choose. That's the power of choice. It's the ability to say yes to good and to say no to limiting, to old thought beliefs and patterns. That's one of the things for me that was one of the most powerful lessons. We've all heard how many times you have to learn to say no. And I'm like, but I don't want to I've learned to say no to the things I don't want, but it's hard to say no to the things we do want, right? One of the greatest lessons for me actually didn't happen in church or a classroom, technically. It was in a priority management class at work, where they were teaching us how to use Microsoft Outlook to manage our tasks a little better. So I'm sure they did not expect for me to come out with a spiritual lesson. But the teacher said to remember that every yes is also a no. So when you say that yes to this, what are you saying no to? And you can think about that literally, like on your calendar. If you're going to go to this event, that space would have been given to something else that now it's not, right? For me, often when my plate gets too full, what falls off is my own self-care. So when we give a yes to the complaining or to focusing on what makes us unhappy, we're also saying no to the opportunity to do the opposite. Just a thought, this idea, this will, it's not some sort of stubborn force. It instead is really this quiet, like a steady rudder that steers us like a ship, but in our consciousness. Because it is up to us. It really is our choice. So it's a conscious choice, though, to align our thoughts, our feelings, our words, our actions with that indwelling Christ. And I know it's not always easy. And it takes practice. You ever have, like, your buttons get pushed by something and you actually are in the moment enough to pause and go, whoa, I'm not going to react to that. Let me take a moment. And you take a deep breath, or maybe you pray, and then you come back into the moment, and whatever it is or whoever it is pushes your buttons again. It's like, come on, now I just paused to pray. You were supposed to fix yourself in that time. It doesn't work that way. So it takes practice over and over and over again, right? Now think of it this way. The universe is this vast sea of potential, right? And divine ideas are constantly flowing, just waiting for us to choose them. And they really are. They're waiting for us to give them form in our lives. And we can choose the opposite if we want. And I don't think we usually want to give our attention, our energy to the opposite. But when we're not being mindful, it just happens. More often for some than others. Myrtle Fillmore said, "It is our privilege and our duty to choose the good and discard the bad." Now when I think of that, wow, so much responsibility and unity, isn't there? Like it's up to us. The only thing we have control over is right here, and only we can change that. But I think about choosing produce in the grocery store. I'm curious to know, how many of you bring home the brown bananas? Of course you don't. They're not, I mean, all right, unless you're baking banana bread. I don't bake banana bread, but I hear that's what you're supposed to do with brown bananas. But otherwise, those aren't the ones you bring home, right? So why do we so often welcome in old limiting beliefs, rotten thoughts, toxic conversations? And again, I don't think that it's conscious, that we're being conscious when we do that. I assume. Don't get me wrong, maybe some days you're like, today I'm just going to wreak havoc. I don't know, maybe. There's probably some people that enjoy that a little bit. I have a lifelong friend who, he should be like, what is that, debate club in college, but we're not in college anymore. He's good at it. But for me, that doesn't feel good, right? But I have to be mindful. It's our divine birthright, truly, to execute this power of choice in our lives. This is our opportunity. We are not victims of our circumstances, although sometimes it feels that way, and I know that. But truth is, we're creators of our reality. And even when something bad happens to us, and it happens, stuff happens, right? Or fill in a different word for stuff. It happens, you know. But the thing that happens after that is up to us. We still have a choice of how to respond or react. We still have a choice of what to focus on afterwards, day after day after day. How long are we carrying the piece of our story that caused us suffering? Because that's only a piece. It's included, it's a part of it, and the things that hurt leave an imprint, absolutely. But we can stay with that piece of the story, or we can turn our attention to the rest of it, because there's a lot of good included as well. Have you noticed? I mean, have you really paused to notice lately? Eric Butterworth said, "You always have a choice. No matter what a person does, the question that we need to ask ourselves," he says, is this: why should I let them decide how I'm going to think or feel or act? The choice is mine, and I must not give that choice to someone else. But we do. I've heard it said, you know, how much do you let somebody rent space in your head? And often when we're busy stirring about whatever it is, first it may even be about someone or situation that we don't even know personally or have anything to do with. But even if we know them, a lot of times they've moved on. They're not in the suffering anymore. You are, because you keep us stirring here, right? So that power of choice says, I get to release that now. I get to choose something different. Every single moment presents us with a choice. Every single one. We can choose to worry, or will we choose to trust? Because that's always an option, right? Will we choose to focus on lack, or will we choose to notice the abundance of what is always here available to us? Will we choose to be reactive, or will we choose to be a deliberate decision maker, to rise above and be this conscious creator? It's up to us. Our lives are the sum total of our choices. Hear that. Our lives, your life, is the sum total of your choices. Now, that doesn't mean you have control over everything that happens, but your reaction, your response, how long you stay in that, creates your experience. Ooh, that's like a little bit of a smack upside the head, isn't it? Your life is the sum total of your choices. One of my favorite quotes, I used to have it in a sticky note on my computer at a time that I worked in a toxic job. And it said, look at your feet. If you don't like where you're standing, move. And I'll tell you what, every time I saw that, it's like, okay, you're not doing anything about it. I mean, like I said, I was in a toxic job at the time. Well, have you updated your resume? Have you applied anywhere? Oh, huh, right. Yeah, every now and then, my kids are grown up, they're adults, they're moved out, and every now and then I'll walk in the house and I'm like, man, somebody needs to clean this place. Oh, it's just me now. So what are you doing about it if you don't like where you're standing? Will you rise above the circumstances of the outer world, because that's our choice? We can't change what's going on out there, but we can anchor ourselves in the truth of our being and do something about what's going on in here. That's the gift. The beautiful truth is that your power of will, your power of choice, allows you to consciously choose to activate all of the beautiful things that Christ's presence is offering within you, all of the 12 powers. So at any given moment, when you feel fear, you can choose to activate the power of faith. You can choose to go within and trust God's plan. And news for you, the how is not always our business. So trust, faith, doesn't mean that we can just choose to come out of fear and all of a sudden we have a blueprint of all the answers. That's not what faith is, right? We can choose to trust that it's working, even when we don't see it. When you feel a moment of maybe friction or conflict, you can go within and choose to activate your power of love and see things through a lens of compassion. Compassion doesn't always mean we understand the situation, but we can have compassion for those within it, right? Or when you feel scattered or maybe unfocused, anyone ever have moments like that? In those moments, you can choose again to take a deep breath, go within, and consciously choose to activate the power of order. And that doesn't mean that, all of a sudden when you choose it, someone magical fairy has cleaned your house. Although I wish, if you know how to do that, please. I've been practicing bewitch powers since I was a kid and it hasn't worked yet. But what it does do when you go into that state of consciousness is it brings a state of harmony to your mind. And from there, you can better respond rather than react to the chaos, to whatever it is that's going on. So these are all these choices that we have. And I mean, it can be exhausting at times, I know, because again, it turns our attention back to us. It's our responsibility. But the will, it's like this master key that unlocks and directs all the other powers within you. We're not passive recipients of these powers. We're really active directors of them. We can choose how to use them. So what is your power of choice? When you think of the 12 powers, and if you don't know them, I'm going to share something kind of fun with you later. But think about these choices, these powers that we have to choose from. Faith, will, release, imagination. What is your power of choice? What is your go-to? And how often do you remember to call it forth? Because that's really the key. For me and all of my humanness, I need reminders. So I really do use things like sticky notes or little visuals that help me to like, oh, yep, okay, hold on, come on back. Because we're so busy being busy, we forget to be. Mary and Martha has always been kind of my anthem scripture. I tend to be a busy go, 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 go. And sometimes what I need most, what is most productive even, is to be in that moment, to center myself, to pause from that outside world. I've often used the acronym HALT. Never make any important decisions when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. HALT. Just pause, take a breath. When you're feeling yourself react, how can you just pause I think my power of choice, or one of my favorites anyways, is the power of imagination. I love to play in my imagination. That's why I find it so enjoyable to be with the kids, because they're real comfortable there. We're adults. We think we need to be grounded in reality. Well, I'll tell you what, reality is also your imagination, because it reminds you, or at least it reminds me, of what's possible. And from that space, we can then see a little bit more clearly as to what could be ours if we choose to create it. If we choose, that's the key, we have to choose. But let's not mistake will for willpower in the practical sense. Just to be clear, it's not about forcing things to happen. Just like faith isn't about being blindly reckless. We still have to, really allow ourselves to go within, to think about that, and be open to hearing that still small voice, to think about what is in our best interest, on how to consciously navigate through life. And will is really about consciously, lovingly, sometimes gently, but persistently choosing the highest good and then getting out of the way. Getting out of the way, allowing divine law to work through us. Because have you noticed that we tend to be our biggest obstacle? It's usually us that gets in the way. And whether it's fear, there's this great book. I don't remember the author's name, but it's called The Opportunity is the book. And it's about this boy who's sitting in a tree waiting for the opportunity to come in. In the story, the opportunity is a ship. It's this grand ship that's going to take you to another land where all this wonderful stuff is going on. And he waits and he waits, and he thinks he sees it. And he starts to run to the dock. He's like, oh, no, wait, what if that's not it? Hold on, let me slow down. And he goes back. And then he starts to see it again. He's like, that really does look like it. And they said, this is the color sails. It looks like that. All right, let me go. And then fear brings him back again. What if it's not? Fear and doubt and hesitation. And finally, he gets so close that he can see it clearly. And he goes running, and he's exhausted and out of breath. And he has to stop, and he doesn't quite make it to the dock. And the opportunity waited a while for him. But he didn't come. He did. But he ran out of breath. He had to pause. He had to slow down because fear and doubt held him back so long. And when he finally got there, the ship had pulled away, and he tried to yell, but he didn't have a breath, and the opportunity left, even though it waited for him. And he goes back to that tree, and the story ends with the sea and how it kept being filled by his tears over the idea that he let the opportunity go. We tend to be our own obstacle because we forget these powers within. We forget this beautiful gift of not just the 12 powers, but just that Christ's presence, that one power. One power is all we need, and that's within us. And that one power shows up as love and life and wisdom and strength, as all these 12 powers, but those are different aspects of that one power within us. We don't always need to know the how, as I mentioned. We just need to know that it's there, that it's true, that it's within us. It's more about the decision to live from that Christ place, that center within you. Just to live from there. And as we learn to use this power wisely, we become really masterful co-creators. We move from being passive passengers to active participants in the unfolding of this. And when we are mindful in those moments, it becomes easier. It becomes easier to resist when the buttons are being pushed. It becomes easier to notice when we're out of alignment. And it doesn't mean that there won't be moments, though. There will be moments of fear, frustration, anxiety, the whole roller coaster of human emotions. They happen. It simply means that we have the power to choose in these moments. We can choose to react, or to complain, to give up, to fight, to flee, to freeze. You know all those. We've done those, right? We've practiced those a time or two in our lives, each of us, I think. Or we can choose to pause. Pause is my most powerful tool. We can choose to go within, to pray, to center ourselves, to shift. Feel the feelings, observe what is going on, observe the situation, observe what's happening within you, and then just choose the next step. So often we go into that fight, flight, or freeze in a group that I run at work called Mindsets and Behaviors. We call that when your amygdala has been hijacked. My amygdala has been hijacked. And if we don't notice, that's when we go into that moment. So really, this is really just about choosing the next step. And that next step maybe to consciously breathe instead of speak for a moment. Can you imagine the difference that would make in certain situations or conversations? Or maybe it's to go for a walk instead of respond to that email in the moment. Again, it could be life-changing sometimes. Maybe it's to sleep on it or phone a friend. Just that next step is all we need to choose. And after that, the next step. The true power is in choosing to pivot when needed. And pivoting is just shifting from one state of mind to the other. It's pausing long enough, just long enough to come back to the state of rational thinking, right? Of being able to tap into that presence within us. And again, the more we practice, the quicker we notice. The quicker we'll become, the quicker we become able, the easier it becomes. And it helps us to be able to choose again and again when needed. Charles Fillmore said, and I love this quote, it so describes my mind. The mind of man is like a net catching every idea. He said, and it is man's privilege and duty under the divine law to separate those that are good from those which are not good. My mind catches all kinds of stuff. Sometimes things pop in my brain that even I am like, where did that come from? April. Like, there's things that I giggle at that aren't supposed to be funny, and there's things that, irritate me that I'm like, wait, why did that even bother me? So it's not about what you catch. You're just the observer. Michael Singer in The Untethered Soul says, we are not our thoughts, we are just the observer. And if you notice something that doesn't serve you, maybe it's a limiting thought pattern or just something wild and wacky, both happen in my net, you can observe it and then release it. Like, okay, not sure where that came from. Maybe we need a nap or a snack. We all have those moments. But then our duty, as he said, is to separate, to sort those out. This quote really highlights the active role of the will perfectly. It's not just in making a choice, but it's in the constant process of discerning and sifting, discerning and sifting. And that's just not only in our thoughts, the thoughts that come to us, but even in how we're going to react or what we react to. Take a deep breath. We do not have to react to everything that happens in front of us. And we don't have to believe every thought that crosses our mind, much less everything other people or the internet says. Just saying. It is not our responsibility, just our responsibility, but really it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity that we've been gifted with, first to notice, and then to have that option of choosing our thoughts that align with divine nature. And again, it's not always easy. That's why we're in this room together. That's why we have family, friends, community, and that's why we have more than one, because you probably each have a few in your tribe that are not the ones that are going to help you to align with your spiritual thoughts. When you phone a friend, we have to be able to sift and discern even the right friend to phone. For me, when I'm in a state of worry, that's probably the most unhealthiest state of mind for me, is worry. And as a mom, I have those they're grown and I still have opportunities to worry. Like, I thought that would have gotten easier after 18. But in those moments of worry, if I am in a downward spiral, I will call a friend, and I have a few I can call and just say, tell me something good. Now, those aren't the ones that are going to go, why, what's going on? That's not the ones that are going to look for the juicy story. But the ones that can simply spit out something good, completely irrelevant maybe a silly joke. And it gives me that pause long enough to go, whew, okay, yep, now I can deal with whatever it is. Now I can think more clearly. But even that, like I said, takes sifting and sorting. Not everybody will be that friend that you should be calling, right? As youth director for so many years, I taught the teens that, and I still have one who's about to graduate high school that every now and then will just text me, tell me something good, I don't need to talk about it. Okay. And she's saying, story doesn't matter. I just need to shift. And I love that we can teach the children this. Can you imagine how life would be different if from the time we were really young, we were given more opportunity to choose and to know how to sift, sort, and choose the good? Because sometimes it's just hard, but that's why we're in it together. Last week, I invited the congregation at Unity East to join me in the 100 Happy Days Challenge. Now, for those of you who may be on my Facebook page, you've seen me do this many times. But basically what it is there's a young man, gosh, probably 2 decades ago now, was about 26, and he was struggling to be happy. And his friends were like, dude, you got this great job and this great girlfriend and this wonderful car and all this stuff, right, that should make you happy. And he's like, I know, but I'm just struggling. And we've all been there, haven't we? Where it's like there's nothing really wrong, but I'm really struggling. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have days like that often, really, where it's like, whew. And he said, all right, I want to be held accountable. And so he asked his friends, he said he was going to post, I don't remember what site it was or wherever, but he was going to share publicly once a day something that made him happy. And he wanted his friends to keep him accountable. And in that process, what was he doing but consciously choosing just to notice, right? It's not like all of a sudden magical stuff happened every day for 100 days. He just chose to notice. And I'll tell you, over the years, as I've done this at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, every time through that 100 days, at least 1 or 2 days come up where I get to the end of the day and my little reminder goes off to share it, and I'm like, well, today was not exactly the happiest of days. But in that moment, I go searching. I sort and sift, look for what's good. And because I like the whole accountability thing, it works for me, I'll go find something that makes me happy before I'll post that nothing did, right? Yeah. And I've had other people tell me that when they see my post, it reminds them that it doesn't take something big. Sometimes it's that littlest thing. I'm not a coffee drinker, but there's an espresso machine in my office, and so much happiness happens there. I almost wish I liked coffee, because I'm like, gosh, it just seems so joyful. I don't get it, I don't like it, but the cream on the top of hot cocoa, oh my goodness. That's not like a winning lottery ticket, but it sure is happy, right? But I wanted to share that with you because whether participating in that challenge or not, the one thing that comes up, and even as you're starting to choose, if you consciously, actively commit to choosing to focus on the good, on your divine nature, there's something that's going to happen, which Charles Fillmore referred to as chemicalization. Now, when we decide to make a shift, it's kind of like, I'm going to give up sugar, and then there's a knock on the door, and my best friend's standing there with my favorite dessert. It's kind of like just the universe going, but are you sure? Are you positive? That's how I would define chemicalization, but let me read to you what Charles Fillmore said. In the Revealing Word, he said, chemicalization in the Revealing Word, he describes it as a condition of the mind that is brought about by the conflict that takes place when a high spiritual condition contacts an old error state of consciousness. That's a lot of words. He goes on to clarify this. He says, whenever a new spiritual idea is introduced in the mind, some negative belief is disturbed, and it resists. With this resistance comes more or less commotion in the consciousness, and this is called chemicalization. I've experienced that. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm going to start, going for a walk every day, and then it rains for the next 4 days. Well, I will have these conversations with myself, like, you're right, you could stay indoors, it is raining, but it's also like 75. I mean, wet doesn't hurt you in the shower. It probably won't hurt you outside. Or, hey, there's even malls you can walk in, it's dry in there. So it's like, you can still choose, right? But yet, right off the bat, we come up with these reasons, right? So with this, if it as it happens, you get to decide to stick with what you choose, or allow the outside circumstances to push back and hold you back. But I want to encourage you to keep going. It'll pass. Keep choosing to look for the good. So to close, I'd like to read to you, this is probably my Catholic background. I'd like to read to you the Beatitudes, but I asked AI to rewrite them for me to align with the 12 powers within us. So I hope you'll enjoy this. May this remind you of the powers within you that you have the option to choose anytime you want. The power of faith. Blessed are those who trust in the invisible, for they shall behold the unfolding of their divine good. The power of love. Blessed are those who express unconditional love, for they shall know the wholeness of the universe. The power of will. Blessed are those who choose to align with the divine, for they shall become masters of their destiny. The power of judgment. Blessed are those who see the Christ in all things, for their wisdom shall guide them. The power of power, or spoken word. Blessed are those who recognize their inner spiritual might, for they shall overcome all challenges. The power of imagination. Blessed are those who envision the good, for they shall create their world from the substance of spirit. The power of understanding. Blessed are those who seek spiritual truth, for they shall be filled with light. The power of life. Blessed are those who radiate life-giving energy, for they shall experience eternal renewal. The power of zeal. Blessed are those who are filled with divine enthusiasm, for they shall accomplish great things. The power of order. Blessed are those who bring divine order to their lives, for they shall know peace. The power of renunciation, or release, elimination. Blessed are those who release limiting beliefs, for they shall inherit the freedom of spirit. And the power of strength. Blessed are those who stand firm in their truth, for they shall be fortified by the divine. Blessed are you, for all of that is who you are. And now as we prepare for meditation, let's just take a deep collective breath together. Let's breathe in those truths. Let's allow ourselves to embody them. Imagine in your mind's eye what it looks like for you to embody power, strength, life, to empower yourself to embody will, love, faith. Close your eyes if you're comfortable and take one more deep cleansing breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And again, this time breathing in peace and breathing out any tension you may notice. Giving yourself permission to release any thoughts, anything that came before this moment or whatever is coming afterwards that you're looking forward to or that you think you have to remember to do. Just allow those to go to the wayside for now. You can pick them back up if you need to afterwards. And now bring your attention, your awareness to the center of your being, to that quiet place within you where the Christ light resides. You are one with divine presence. It is your very essence. I invite you to bring your mind to a situation in your life or maybe a place within your body where you feel tense or stuck or uncertain. You don't have to do anything or change anything about it. Just observe it for a moment. Now again, in your mind's eye, see yourself consciously, gently, lovingly choosing to release the illusion of powerlessness. Give yourself permission to rest in faith. For a moment in this sacred space, allow yourself to be comforted in the arms of the presence of the Christ within. And remember that you are a powerful child of God. Just breathe that in as we affirm to ourselves this statement. I am a channel for divine will. My choices are guided by the wisdom of the universe. I choose to align my thoughts with peace, my words with love, my actions with joy. Just feel the surge of empowerment that comes from this conscious choice, just in choosing. It fuels us. Breathe in this truth. Let it fill every cell of your being, from the top of your head down through your thoughts, your memories, your body through the bottom of your feet. And bring it back up and just notice where you feel that in your body. Just notice. You have the power of choice. You have the power of will. You are free. In this silence, we affirm God's presence. We center ourselves in prayer. We realize our oneness with the divine, and we give thanks. And we give thanks. And we give thanks. And so it is, and so it shall be. As we begin to bring our attention back to this space, I welcome you just to notice and give thanks for each movement, for each cell, for each muscle and bone, for each movement as you start to bring yourself back into this room. As you open your eyes, give yourself permission to give thanks, to feel gratitude for your sight, for your voice, for your hearing. As we choose to be grateful, more to be grateful comes into our awareness. And so just look around for a moment and say, thank you, God. And so it is.